Welcome everybody. Again, I'm Robert Killen. I'm going to be leading the show today, and this is our presentation. Today we're in week 7. Which funding source is right for you? This is the welcome. We're going to have a sponsor highlight. I'll introduce our Oregon Pacific Bank representative here in just a minute. And then we're going to have something special today. We've got Sean Tate, who's going to be talking about advocacy and advocating before yourself. And then before we do that, I do have to acknowledge our sponsors. We are funded by the EDA, the U.S. Economic Development Administration. They put a lot toward this in terms of funding the course itself. And then Olive Rain is supported by the cities that invite us in, the counties, government agencies, and foundations. There's a lot of different organizations that consider entrepreneurship to be terribly important and provide us funds to help make it better wherever you are. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mike Webb. I don't have a formal bio for Mike, but I know he's at Oregon Pacific Bank as commercial relationship manager. I've been in his role in the past, and I can tell you it's a marvelous role because you get to work closely with the business, not just on their loan needs, but really on their entire business and how they can use financial tools to make their business better. And if his LinkedIn is accurate, he's been doing this for nearly 25 years. With that, Mike, you are up. And Mike's going to be talking today about when the right time is to ask for financing.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, I have been with the bank almost 25 years, and community banking is different because you get a chance to work with clients and work with them face to face. And that's one of the tie-ins to what our topic is. When is a good time to ask a bank for financing? I would say as soon as you have an idea that you're looking for financing for. A bank may or may not say yes. They may be able to lead you in some directions to get money then, but most often they're going to ask you some questions that are going to help you to figure out what your business is about, lay out some tools that might help you forecast what your financing needs are going to be, business plan, work through the whole process so that you can become bankable. We might not be able to bank everybody right off the bat. Normally, we like to see a business have a couple of years of seasoning of cash flow because we're not lending our own money. We're lending borrowers or depositors like you. We're lending your money, and we have to be responsible to those who insure that. So we're a little bit more careful than an investor might be. But that being said, it doesn't hurt to ask a bank, especially a community bank, what it would take to get financed. I've had people come in for a small startup where they have other sources of income, and maybe they do a home equity line of credit. Maybe they refinance a car, they get a little bit of money from that and get their ball rolling, and then they seek out other financing elsewhere or go back to the bank for more. So it's never too early to start that relationship. So that's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate that. And Kat has asked, what about startup capital? We're actually going to be covering that in today's presentation. But if you want to give just a couple of words on helping, where does a business find startup capital?
Startup capital, there are some government guarantee programs that can help from a bank perspective, but typically it's private money, or you're doing something a little bit out of the norm where you might be doing a consumer loan, say a house refinance or a home equity line of credit, in order to get a nest egg that will help you start up a business. It's risky that way, and you're going to have to think that one through, but that's the way a bank will be able to help you. But other than that, entrepreneurs are typically financed by private investors to start with.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Oregon Pacific Bank, for your sponsorship of this program. It's an honor to have you guys on the team. All right. Okay, and next, Sean, we're gonna see you, so I'm going to not show your slide here because it's just you smiling, and you can smile.
That's great.
All right. So
That's
Sean
great.
Tate is with Tate Public Affairs. He is on our team with entrepreneurial advocacy, and he's going to talk a little bit today about the work we've been doing, and I believe, and how entrepreneurs can advocate for themselves. So Sean, do we have video for you today?
I'm going to do my level best to share my screen,
Okay.
but it's telling me that the host has disabled my participant screen sharing.
You are now a co-host. You're good.
And fantastic. We're going to hit the button again and see what happens. That's the one. There we go. Can everybody see a screen that says telling your story to policymakers?
It's hopefully coming up. I'm seeing that you're sharing, but it's blank. There you are.
Okay. Okay, great. Fantastic. So good morning, everybody. First of all, it's a great invitation that I received to do this, and I'm very grateful to Ani and certainly to Robert for jumping in this morning. My name again is Sean Tate. I own and operate Tate Public Affairs. I am a contract lobbyist by trade, and among my clients is Oregon RAIN. The work that I do for RAIN is specific to a grant from the Kauffman Foundation that funds their effort locally, which is America's New Business Plan, a fantastic initiative designed to give a voice to entrepreneurs, really small businesses across the United States of America relative to policy. And that's what we're going to be talking about very briefly today. I've truncated this presentation down to really just kind of the highlights, and there is more to this. If we want to have a conversation later, I will share with you my email address at the end. So with that, I'm going to try to advance a slide. There we go. This is an incredibly smart person that lived a long, long time ago by the name of Pericles, and somebody else wrote this down, which made them pretty smart too. Just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you. It is that very line, that very quote, if you will, that changed my mind about politics and got me into this career in the first place. It's worth paying attention to because there really isn't anything you can do for a living legally in the state of Oregon that isn't somehow affected by policy and or rule. So it's really important to pay attention to this stuff. A few things about our friends in Salem. They likely do not know what you do, and if they know anything about it, it's very little. They work very, very hard. They work a lot more hours than it looks like. Most people think that the legislative session is the only time they do the work. Frankly, that's the easy part. There's an incredible amount of political pressure that they're under. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of groups that want their attention. And in addition, Oregon doesn't pay a great wage to our policymakers, so they have to work for a living as well. This is a really important point, I think, to make. They care about their policy issues. If you want them to care about your policy issues that you've identified, you really have to communicate some feelings in addition to some facts. Facts tell it, feelings sell it, and that's just as true in politics and policy as it is anywhere else. This is really a short list of important areas to focus on. Be prepared to make your CAS. That's supposed to say case. It's a 15-minute meeting, generally speaking, with a policymaker, and it goes by fast, right? In that 15 minutes, you got to share where it hurts, the specific policy that's causing you issues and the pain that it's causing, why it's bad, what happens if we don't change anything, concrete ideas as opposed to your best guess, tying things back to a legislator's district and constituents and opportunities for them is also a pretty good strategy. Bring an answer with you to the conversation. It certainly makes their job easier. As I mentioned in the beginning, they are not experts in what you do, and they aren't likely to have a great idea to fix it either. And lastly, on this slide, bring some friends with you, right? Ask some of the people that you do work with, or some of your colleagues, if they share an interest in this. and develop a small coalition. That's how you generate a little bit more of a powerful voice. I like this slide. It's not my dog, but the point here is to keep doing it. There are bills in the legislature that are introduced 10 times before they pass. There's a bill that's been introduced every legislative session that hasn't passed. It's to change make speed bumps a uniform height. It may never pass, but people are passionate about it and they keep trying and they're bringing it up every time. Follow up with these people that you talk to, invite them to your place, show them what you do. If they ask a question, make sure you answer it. Know who their legislative staff is, and continue to work your issue. The rule of 7 mentioned down there, it's an old marketing rule. You've got to say your name 7 times. They got to hear who you are 7 times before they might remember you on their own. I'd double it, quite frankly. So expectations. Let's be realistic. It's a hard thing to change policy, and it's not an automatic just because you get started. There's politics. There's people that decide that they don't want to run or they get booted out of office. Districts change. We're going through that right now. So at the same time, you're being urgent. You have to be patient and you have to remember why it's important. And frankly, take a small victory. Anything that you do to advance the conversation to the next stage, right? Be it another meeting or another phone call or anything like that, is a small victory. And take it. It definitely builds over time. And quickly, Robert, I hope that I haven't gone over my time limit. Here's the truncated summary. These are just great people who are trying their best to work very, very hard, and they're doing what they believe in. All right. These are not anybody you have to put up on a pedestal, nor anybody you have to be afraid to talk to. Keep your message simple, get to the point, do it again. Keep advancing the issue that you have, keep asking for engagement, and remember, a victory is still a victory, even if it's small. And with that, if anybody has any questions or wants to follow up with a specific concern that they have, the advocacy team is ready and waiting to hear from you. My email address is Sean, SEAN, at tatepublicaffairs.com. And I look forward to hearing from you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sean. And you did great on time. If you want to put your email in the chat, that would be awesome. And I'm actually going to share the screen since we didn't get to, oh, now I need you to give me, make me a co-host, Darren, since I made you the host. There is a question for you, Sean, which is, what sort of issues would our folks here as small businesses want to put before a policymaker?
Yeah, really great question. So it really depends on the business that you're in, but in I would say almost every case I've identified, there are regulatory issues that pop up that might be unrelated to your mission, but might have something to do with you being able to do business that you need to navigate. Maybe there's a hiring issue. Maybe there's a challenge with an interstate compact and you're trying to get somebody from another state to come up and do work for you and you can't because there's a regulatory burden. You'll run into these things and you'll know what they are when they happen. When somebody says it's a law or it's a rule or it's something that can't be broken, that's when you've hit a legislative or a policy barrier. And that's when you start talking to your policymakers. Excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, there have been, give you a good example of a small business. Actually, I think it was King Estate, right? You might not think of them as a small business, but technically they are. And when they were getting going, they were trying to figure out how they could do tasting, right? Because the agriculture rules didn't allow for the sale of product, on a production site. And in Oregon now, there is a rule, and Sean, I'm probably butchering this, but there is a rule that allows for wineries to have tasting rooms on their locations. And it's a specific sort of carve out. somebody had to decide, hey, this is something that's really important that's not allowed by current policy.
That's right.
And we think it should. We think
Yeah.
it should be allowed.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly that. Sometimes it comes down to a simple land use issue that somebody needs help navigating. And like I said, you'll know when you see it. You don't have to worry about it sneaking past you. When you hit a wall, you hit a wall. So.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Sean. I appreciate you being here, and
my
I
pleasure.
appreciate the work you do for us.
Thanks, everybody. You guys take care.
All right. So it's great to have Sean on the team. So this is where we're at this week. We're at week 7, which funding source is right for you. I'm our presenter today, just coincidentally. And this is actually the start. I should have welcomed, we've got about a dozen people here who are new, who are here specifically for these last few sessions on funding. So welcome to all of you who are new to us today. And next week, we're going to have Peter Thorson from Palo Alto Software be talking about how much you should raise based on where you're at. And then our final, full lesson day will be September 28th with Raj Vabel. Some of you may remember Raj from being on the team previously. He's now actually in Michigan, still pursuing his excellent startup, Young Mountain Tea. But he's going to be talking about plans and pitches and putting your best foot forward. I do have a mentor hour to follow up today's presentation, which will be tomorrow at 4. And Ani will be getting the information to you for that. You actually do have access to these slides, so you can see there's a link right here. There's a link right here for you if you don't get an email. So know that you have that. Let's talk just a very little bit about the pitch competition. Ani did send out a special email just about that with the video she created. She did ask me to let you know that although she used hypothetical businesses for her samples, she is expecting that you actually use your business, and you're pitching. You are pitching your business, and hopefully you have some future need that you can imagine if you don't have it right now. So you can actually identify what your ask is related to your business. And if you have to make up something, that's fine. If you don't want to use your business and want to create a hypothetical, that's fine too. But we are hoping that you will put this to use for you and your businesses. Any questions on that before I move forward?
Is the ask normally in terms of dollars, right?
Yes, because this ask is because we're in the financial, this is the MONEYmaker accelerator. A dollar ask would be most appropriate here. Thank you, Sandy. And I think we got and
So
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I missed.
So is the prize? So there's different prizes, and this is just to an exercise, or is this actually to get funding?
No, this is not to get, I can't tell you this is to get funding. There are prizes available. Ani actually has the detail on the prizes, and she'll let you know more about that next week. We have had a little bit of cash that we've offered in the past, in past accelerators, like $1,000 to our, to the best pitch. But then it ends up being a lot of other resources that are made available. But like I said, Ani will get you the details. But no, we do not. We are not an accelerator of that type that actually has large amounts of funding to come in behind you. So just want to be clear about that. All right.
One more question.
Yes, Sandy.
Yeah, rather two more questions. Does it normally talk? Do you normally ask for a outlay in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? That's the question. And number 2, are there going to be actual investors who would be looking at your pitch?
No, there will not be investors. This is so the reason for the pitches in our programs are to help you take what you've learned and provide a clear expression of your need and what you've learned. And it might be easiest to describe in terms of the last accelerator, which was a digital marketing accelerator, which is all about marketing. And our pitch in that case was not about funding at all. The pitch was a description of how you were going to market or get the word out about your business. So that the pitch was even, wasn't funding related at all. It was definitely focused on the content. This content happens to be financially oriented, so it feels more like a traditional pitch, but it's still like a capstone activity for the course. Just a way to bring together all of the information, and hopefully you will feel more confident about where you are in your business and what funds you might need, and give you that practice. But it's really no more than that.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay. I don't want anybody to feel that they're, that they're competing for investor eyes in this. That's not what this is about. Okay. Well, with that, let's go ahead and jump into the presentation. Today, we are talking about which funding source is right for you. And yeah, I guess I'll start right here. So I'll introduce myself in a little greater detail, but I'm really excited about this topic, which funding source is right for you, choosing the right source of capital for your business. The reason that I'm excited about this is from my background. I have been a banker for 7 years. I was a banker. Most of that was as a business lender and commercial relationship manager. And I was constantly frustrated by just the misinformation that's out there about funding businesses, and an utter lack of comprehensive and compact information that describes the whole landscape. What are all of the options, and why would you choose as a business owner one type of funding over another? It's really hard to find that out there. That's actually what we're trying to accomplish today. And if I am successful, if we are successful in that, we'll actually have something pretty exciting to hang our hat on. Like it says here, I am a past banker. I was also the director of the Lane Small Business Development Center. So I've tackled these questions a lot. And like I said, I'm really passionate about that. Today, we're going to talk about, how funding works, or basically what is funding, what options are available, and which option is the best fit for you. If I can help you get even close to that, I'll consider this a success. One word of warning. There is a lot of content in this presentation. And when I coach presentation, I say, pare it down. But in this case, I do want to give you the full comprehensive view. So I'm going against my own advice here, but I'm going to allow you to ignore anything that doesn't apply to you. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. So listen for where you're at in your business and the things that you do think that apply, and feel absolutely free to just cast off things that you don't feel apply. You can always come back to this at a later time. We'll have this available within just a few days for you to review. Okay. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. Just, take what is valuable to you. So let's start with just one slide answering a simple question. And I spent some time trying to distill the answer to this question, because you can't find a comprehensive answer. And so this is what I've come to, and I'm actually pretty excited about this, which is that all business financing exists to bridge a financial gap before expected funds come in. All of it. Okay. And so here are a few examples. In a short term, this is the easiest example. You might have invoice financing. This might be a line of credit that's tied to invoicing. So when you send an invoice out to a client, you've already done the work, or you've given them the product, and they're going to pay you in 30 days. But you need that money now. You've got things you need to do with that money. You have this line of credit. You borrow, say, 70% of what that invoice is. So you've got $1,000 invoice. You can borrow, say, $700 that you can put to use now. And then when the check comes in on that invoice, when the invoice gets paid, you immediately pay back that $700 plus any interest that had accrued during that time. And the rest is cash that you can continue with. So the idea is that you are utilizing money. The funding is bridging a gap between the need right now and when you expect that money to come in 30 days. Okay, very simple example. Medium term is a little bit harder, but it's the same thing. So let's imagine you buy a high-end printer for your business. You spend $5,000 on a business and you take out a 5-year loan to get it. So what's that? Why is it a 5-year loan? Well, the banker will tell you it's a 5-year loan because we expect that this printer will make you money. It has to make you more money than eventually make you more money than it costs, or you shouldn't be making that purchase. Every purchase should be making you money. So that printer we expect to pay for itself over time, and in 5 years it will have completely paid itself off. So we're going to give you a loan that matches that. So the loan matches the amount of time the bank or lender expects that printer to pay for itself. Okay, that's how these things work. So this is also bridging a financial gap. You get $5,000 now for this printer, and you expect that over time that money will come back to you over the next 5 years. So again, you're bridging this financial gap. That's what the funding is for. And then probably the easiest example of all is a long-term investment. Aunt Sally gives you $20,000 early in your business. You think your business is worth, maybe it's worth $200,000 as is. So Aunt Sally's investment is effectively 10% of your business. So you write her in as a 10% co-founder, or 10% partner in your business. And she doesn't want any money now, anytime soon. At some point down the road, 10, 20 years down the road, your business has exploded and you're finally going to sell, or you want to buy out Aunt Sally. She will get that money in the future. So she's giving you money with the expectation that that 10,000 is going to help you earn more, and then she'll get it back in the future. So all funding serves this purpose. And it's important to think about that, especially early on when you're making purchases. A lot of businesses early on get themselves in trouble because they're making purchases that look good. It's sort of the shiny object syndrome. You know, they buy the latest piece of software, they buy the Cadillac of printers or whatever it is, when they don't really need it, and they can't yet justify that purchase is actually going to pay itself back. So it's important when you are funding your business to think about funding in these terms. When you're borrowing money, do you know how that borrowing is going to come back to you in terms of additional profit, at least paying for itself? Okay, that's the purpose of business funding. Critical. I think it's a critical consideration. So we're actually just going to talk about two things here. What funding sources are available, and then we'll follow that up by what factors make certain types of funding more accessible to you. What are the factors to consider? We're going to start here with funding sources that are available, and I've got these categories that we'll be going through. Self-funding, friends, family, and fools, we'll talk about that. Bootstrapping, debt shaped as a loan, debt shaped as a line of credit, equity, and then a miscellaneous category. And then we'll follow that with quick notes about crowdfunding and everybody's favorite topic, except mine, grants. Okay, so these are what we're going to talk about here in the first half of this presentation. Let's start with self-funding. Self-funding can be defined as relying exclusively on your personal resources to fund your venture. Okay, and before I give you the examples, I just need to tell you, in case you're wondering or have wondered about this, when you look at how small businesses are funding, over 80%, 83% of businesses do not access traditional debt or venture capital. It's actually probably right around 80% are truly self-funded. That means they are relying on their own resources to fund their business. And that could be, as the examples here show, savings, credit cards, personal loans to you, home equity, a line of credit. These are the the tools that the vast majority of small business owners are using to fund their business. Now, you might hear out there that they do it this way because they can't get other funding, but that's not always the case. We actually don't know how many of those, that 80% would take other types of debt if they could get it, or other types of funding if they could get it, or if they just prefer, they want this to be entirely on them. You know, they want to be in charge. We don't know the answer to that, but we do know that the number is large. So if you are mistakenly thinking that all these businesses out here are all getting money and I'm not, that's not how it's working, right? I just want to be really clear about this. And that's a big part of this presentation, is bringing clarity to a lot of misinformation that's out there. Unfortunately, clickbait would have us believe that there's a bunch of free money out there. You just have to go out and find it. And that's not quite as true as it would lead you to believe. So self-funding is definitely the #1 source of funds. And it's good at any stage. You always have the ability to bring your own money into your business. And some people really like feeling that it's all about, it's all them. A related category are friends, family, and fools, which is defined as funds contributed by personal contacts, often with minimum due diligence. And the reason that I put that in there, with minimum due diligence, is that these funds are very similar to other types of funding. So you can get, a family member sends you money as a loan. So is that considered a loan? Yes, it is, and it should be written that way. You could get an investment from Aunt Sally or an uncle, or you could get a true gift. The reason that this has its own bucket that we talk about, friends, family, and fools, is not the shape of the contribution, but rather the reason behind it. Friends, family, and fools, they give you money because of you. They're contributing because they know you, they like you, you talk them into, to an idea, but they don't have the expertise, or maybe don't even care about the business themselves. They're primarily focused on helping you. So it warrants its own category. This is really valuable early stage. If you have a business and you're not ready for the bank, as Mike described, going to your friends and family is really important. I will tell you that back when I was a banker, we called it friends and family. I don't know when they started adding fools to the process, and I don't necessarily like it, but it's called that more now than back in my banker days. So I still think of it as friends and family. I don't know who the fools are. So, but know that this is a category that you can lean into early on. And then the final sort of self-made, self-contained funding source is bootstrapping. And it's not actually seeking out external capital. Bootstrapping, as I define it, is relying exclusively on your business's cash flow to fund growth. Okay, and I'll describe how that works here in a second. But before I do, very often when you go out and you're searching bootstrapping, you'll find another definition that includes self-funding, and some that even exclusively say it is self-funding, but that's not the same thing in my mind. It's not valuable, meaningful to have it included. We've already described self-funding as using personal financial assets to fund your business. Bootstrapping, for me, is a process. It's a process of managing your business cash flow so that you always have cash to invest in the next thing. And I'll describe it through these strategies. So you start within your means. This is where the self-funding does come in. You start with a business that doesn't require a huge amount of external funds to get going. You can get it off the ground on your own. And then you run lean. What this means is that you don't go out and buy a Cadillac printer just because you can. You buy the bare minimum printer that does what you need it to do. You run as lean as possible, so you're saving as much cash as you can, right? And from a cash flow perspective, you want to get your cash as quickly as possible. So if you can do cash transactions, that's a whole lot better than invoicing. When you send an invoice out and you have to wait 15, 30, 45 days to get paid. So getting cash as quickly as possible. And on the flip side, paying your vendors as slowly as possible. So if you can push out those vendors so that they don't need your money for 30 days or longer, that's great. That can be really hard as a brand new business because a lot of vendors, they will require you to pay faster because you don't have the experience. But if you can optimize those vendor contracts, that's great. And the reason for this is the cash flow cycle, is that the earlier you have cash, the earlier you can put it to use to do the next thing. If you thought about the opposite of this, so your vendors are requiring you to pay up front and then you're invoicing and you're not getting cash in for ages, then you can have the exact same number of transactions, but you have absolutely no cash to work with, no cash to move forward with, because all your cash is out there in an invoice and you spent what you had on materials, on supplies, on inventory. So these are strategies of bootstrapping. It's a lot of work. And if you are a business owner, if you have a business that is in a position to get other money, but chooses not to, chooses to bootstrap, it's going to take you longer, right? Because being able to leverage other money gives you access to funds quicker. But if you can actually successfully accomplish this, you can build your business without any debt, without anybody else listed as an owner. That's sort of the hero state of a business, is being completely self-built, but it's really hard. And then the last strategy here, it's all related, is pre-selling whenever possible. If you have the ability to get money even before you provide your service or before you've built the product, do so. Getting cash, it's all about getting cash as quickly as you can. Okay, that's what bootstrapping is. And for many of you who are you're starting up your business, if you can think about these concepts, even if you're not going to exclusively bootstrap, you're going to bring in other funds, but you still think about these processes, building a business that is lean and nimble and getting cash quick will set you up for success. So it's definitely something to look at and consider as you're designing your own business model. Okay. Now let's jump into debt real quick. So there are two different types of debt. The first one here are loans. Loans are funds received with an obligation to repay with interest over a specified period of time. Okay, pretty standard stuff. Like I talked about already, you get a 5-year loan for a high-end printer. You're going to be paying that off monthly, most likely, with interest as it accrues. And in 5 years, it's all paid off. So you get the money up front, pay it off over time. There are different types of loans. Bank loans, as Mike was describing, the banks offer businesses loans, and they want to lend to you, but also, as he described, they have their clients' money that they have to protect. So banks have to be incredibly careful, and they're just unwilling to take very much risk. That's not their job to take risk. Now, if they are going to take some risk, there are programs like the SBA that provide some guarantee to the bank if things fall apart. But even then, there's some expectation that the business has traction and is moving forward. Different types of bank loans, equipment loan, I already described, working capital loans, those exist. They're a little harder to get, but this is a loan to just cover basic expenses, payroll and marketing and all those things. And generally, those are shorter term, like 12-month loans. But you would need to be in business for a time, say a couple of years, before you could expect somebody to get you a working capital loan. I created this category of underwritten debt because it's not really well described out there in the industry. And these are loans that are offered by organizations that aren't using the public's money, but they're using funds that have a specific purpose. Business Oregon has loan programs that they can give to businesses that are going to be hiring a bunch of people because they want to encourage more employment. CLW stands for Community Lending Works. They have funding that is more flexible for startups and earlier stage businesses. So definitely somebody to look toward, and I can get you a link to that and send it out through Ani. LCOG, Lane Council of Governments, they have a whole package of different loan programs, and different cities around might even have their own loan programs. And these programs are designed to help improve economic activity in their areas or for a specific purpose. So there's greater flexibility there. And then I just put down here, there are a lot of online lenders out there. Most of them are entirely above board, but there is some predatory financing out there. So you want to be careful. If you're getting no's from your local bank or some online lenders, but then all of a sudden somebody is really willing to give you money, pause, right? You just want to be certain that they are completely above board. So look for reviews, look for other people who've had experience with that lender. And then the other type of debt are lines of credit, which is defined as funds available to be drawn as needed. So it's a credit limit, a credit line with minimum monthly payments, often interest only, and the balance paid as appropriate or at maturity. So examples here are a credit card, business credit card. An unsecured line of credit is a line of credit that doesn't have any collateral attached, meaning that if eventually it doesn't get paid, the lender is sort of out. And then there's secured lines, which are lines of credit that actually do have assets that are secured so that if you disappear, they can come and get that inventory and try and get their money back. That's what collateral is all about. I do want to say there's an important bit of learning in the line of credit space that I became aware of as a banker, and I kind of wish we all understood this. And that is that lines of credit, as I described at the very beginning, are best managed when you completely understand when this money that you're pulling out of it is going to be paid back. So you're going to borrow $10,000 off of your line of credit to do a certain thing. You need to be crystal clear about how doing that thing is going to bring you more money so that you can pay back the line of credit. There's actually a term that we used to use in the bank called permadebt. And permadebt are typically unsecured lines of credit that business owners had used for whatever reason, but they never paid it back. And so they just kept using the line of credit until it was capped at $50,000 or $100,000. And it's been sitting there as a debt that's not doing them any good. All it's doing is costing them interest, and they've got no plans to pay it off. It's a really unhealthy situation, and something that can be cured if we recognize that when we borrow funds, we need to understand how we're going to pay that back, and we are diligent about doing so. If we add that same idea, that same knowledge in the personal credit space, think of how much healthier, families and relationships would be across the world if people could use their credit cards in the same way and pay those credit cards off intentionally. Lines of credit are really, really valuable if they're used right. And then we have equity. Equity is an investment made in the business in return for a percentage of ownership. Okay, that's just critical for you to understand. And equity doesn't mean just venture capital. Everybody's watched Shark Tank. We all think about that type of equity. But equity can be much, much lower key. So the example I gave at the very beginning with Aunt Sally and a $20,000 investment in your new business. If Aunt Sally said, yeah, give me 10% of your business, then you're no longer a sole proprietorship. You are now a partnership. So you need to write that down and be really clear about it. But that's not, Aunt Sally's not expecting to be paid off soon. And a lot of investors aren't. Many investors might be interested in what you have have going on simply because they love the space that you're working in. They really like your business idea. They have some funds. They're willing to, come along as a silent partner, just to help you grow because they think there's value there in the future. They aren't necessarily looking to have their money, pay 5 times what they've invested in 5 years, or they don't have any specific goals like that. So you can recruit partners into a partnership. You can, establish as a corporation and sell stock. In an LLC, you actually sell memberships, you create new members. All of that is a form of ownership in your business. And that can be low key. It doesn't have to be angel investment or venture capital. Angels and VCs, they are typically looking for a fairly short-term return on their investment. So they invest in your business and they expect in 3, 5, 10 years to get back a significant return. So it's a different world. It has its own rules. And because they're looking for these big returns, the world of venture capital and angel investors is really exclusively for very high growth businesses. There's a little bit more flexibility in that now, but generally speaking, venture capital is looking for businesses that are going to grow exceptionally fast so that they're taking home run swings with every investment. They're really looking to get big returns. So if you have a slower growth business, you've got a brewery, we're working with one right now. You've got a local service-based business that's not going to grow spectacularly fast. You're not going to take over the world. VCs, venture capital, and angels, probably not a good fit for you. There are always exceptions, but just in general, I want people to recognize there is a difference between angel investor and other type of investors. Angels and venture. All right. I'm sure there's lots of questions out there. We're going to get through these slides and give you time to get with your groups. So other miscellaneous category, there are lots of different ways businesses raise funds. Some have been around for a long time and others are brand new that are changing the market right now. Some examples are crowdfunding, leasing. So crowdfunding we'll talk about in a second. Leasing is very similar to renting. It's a way that you can bring in equipment to your business and you pay people for, you pay the provider for it and then give the equipment back over time. Factoring is a word you'll come across if you're familiar with credit recovery. I shouldn't say credit recovery, collections. If you're familiar with collections, how if a business has an invoice that they haven't been able to collect on, they can sell that for pennies on the dollar to a collection agency, and then the collection agency will try and get the money back. Factoring is similar, except the business sells all of their invoices to the factoring company. And one might wonder, well, why would they do that? They do that because they might be in an industry where it's hard to get paid back, or they just can't afford the expense of having somebody focused on collecting invoices all the time. And so it is more valuable for them to get 90% of the cash earlier than to get all the cash. So factoring for the right businesses is a good tool. Merchant cash advances, once you've got some experience with your credit card processor, a lot of them are now offering up a line of credit, basically, that says, based on your transactions every month, we're allowing you to borrow against the expected money that's going to be coming in. Revenue stream trading is brand new. There's a company out there called Pipe that if you have recurring revenue streams, like a subscription model, and so every month you're getting money in regularly from subscribers, you can actually bundle that up, and they've created a marketplace where people will bid to basically own that revenue stream. So you can get money in advance, again, for future expected revenue streams coming in. Grants we'll talk about in a second. And then know that if you're getting equipment, a lot of vendors have their own type of financing. Some of them are just loans. They can often be expensive, but sometimes they're a better option than going outside the vendor because they offer expertise, they offer some bonuses. So a little bit about crowdfunding. First, know that crowdfunding is rapidly growing. This is not, it's not a fad. It is now well established, and there are 4 different fundamental crowdfunding models. There's rewards-based crowdfunding where people contribute so that they get the product after you've built it. That's a type of pre-sale, so you can use this as a cash management tool. Donation funding is exactly what it as described. They aren't expecting anything in return. They're donating to your business because they like what you're trying to do and they want to support you. Debt, I don't see a lot of debt financing or debt crowdfunding out there, but honeycomb credit is one example where people will contribute, and then all of those contributions will get turned into a note, and you will pay them back over time. And the biggest one, the sort of the final one here, is equity-based crowdfunding, where people actually invest through a crowdfunding platform in your business. And we're partnered with Republic through our RainCap program to help Oregon-based businesses who want to explore that. So you can reach out to us if you have interest in that. And then a little bit about grants. Again, my not favorite topic. So here's the thing. There's a lot of clickbait out there telling you that there's money out there just waiting for you to find it. Maybe there is, right? But it's so hard to find, you have to ask yourself if it's worth looking for, okay? There are some grant or options out there, but here's the thing to remember. Grants are always made to achieve specific goals of the funder. And the needs of your business are going to have to align with those goals. And it's going to require a lot of investigation on your part, typically, to find grants that are right for you. Some examples of grants that are available out there right now. Business Oregon has a STEP grant program for exporters, for people who want to export. If you have an interest in selling overseas, they've got funds to help you out. So that's a specific grant, very specific purpose. If it fits you, it's awesome. If it doesn't fit you, it's not a fit. The SBA has run disaster recovery grants for ages, and all of the COVID-related funding, those were all variations of the SBA's disaster recovery programs. But hopefully you're not in a disaster and don't need those funds. I'll go down to the bottom, the SBIR, STTR. If you click on one of those clickbait ads, it will eventually take you to one source of consistent funding, which is the SBA's SBIR and STTR grant program. Those are out there, but these programs are specifically for investigation that's going on in universities, almost exclusively research that could lead to new innovative businesses. That's what SBIR and STTR are all about. So even though the clickbait will lead you there, for a traditional Main Street business that's already off the ground, it's just not a fit. So I just want to be really clear about that. Now, one thing with a lot of flexibility has been the governor's strategic reserve. Right now, there's no funds in that reserve, but every once in a while, Business Oregon or the state will provide this fund, the strategic reserve, with some money that the state has, the governor's office has the flexibility to use however they like. It's probably the most flexible grant that I'm aware of out there. And we actually had one of our clients up in Benton County that made use of this and was able to get some of those funds to expand their business. So, that is an example of when there are some funds out there, but it's a constantly moving target. There is no repository of, all known grants because they're constantly coming in and out and being offered by different organizations for different purposes. It's just a constantly moving target. So I want everybody to be really clear about that. Okay. So those are grants. I don't mean to be the wet blanket here, but I just want to be honest about what grant opportunities really mean. Okay. All right, so let's quickly go through these factors, and then we can jump into a chart that I've made for you. There are different factors which determine the best fit funding for you. And I'm going to go through these 6 real quick. Your stage, financial condition, cost of funds, the purpose of your funds, ownership dilution, and growth rate. And these will all make more sense here in a second. First one is simple, the stage. There are actually 6 different stages, but the last one doesn't matter for our purposes. The stages are idea, launch, growth, maturity, and renewal. Idea, you're still trying to figure out what it is you're going to do. The launch stage, you've got this idea for a business and you're starting to have transactions. You're most likely not profitable yet, still trying to figure out exactly how the business is going to be shaped effectively to move forward. And then once you have figured that out, at least you think you have, and you're having more consistent transactions, you're in the growth phase. So you're now growing your business, but there's still some change happening. You're getting your business from, early, just getting a few transactions to consistency, and all of that is growth. And then once you've achieved that consistency, you're in maturity. This is your business that you don't need extra funds to come in and keep it going. It's running under its own steam. No business can stay there forever because there's always going to be competition over time and changes in the industry. So eventually your business will start to decline if you don't make changes. And that's when you come into renewal. So now you need to do something new to keep your business fresh. The final stage that's not listed here is exit. You don't need extra funds to get out of your business. So we're not talking about that here. Just want to point out that the best fit sources for earlier stages are self-funds, friend, family, and fools, underwritten debt. Those are programs like community lending work, angel investing, and crowdfunding. I should have also put in here just identifying investors if you want to do that. Just investors, not necessarily angels. Those are the best fit sources for earlier stages. The next one is financial condition. And I'll just point out here that as a banker, I'm familiar with the 5 C's of credit, but everybody who's potentially going to offer you money is going to be looking at your financial condition in one way or another. I'm sharing the 5 C's here so that you have an idea of the types of things that are looked at. Capacity is the predicted cash flow. A bank, they're not going to give you a loan if you can't show them exactly how the cash flow from your business is going to pay it back. They don't want to rely on, on coming and grabbing the printer and, selling it so they get paid back. The bank doesn't want to do that. They want your cash flow to work, right? Capital includes how much you're contributing and have contributed to this need, whatever it is, and any additional reserves that you have. So, you might have an investment account somewhere that you're not tying to the business, but the bank would like to see, or the funder would like to see that, oh, they have additional reserves that if things get tough, they can tap into. Collateral is an asset that could be sold as a last resort to repay the credit. Typically, if you're getting a loan, the purpose of the loan to buy the printer, to buy the piece of property, that is collateral. Sometimes you'll need to find a different piece of collateral that you can add to the deal in order to get a funder to agree to it. Character, we could just write credit here because that's really all that's looked at is your credit history, your credit score. Credit scores are supposed to be an indication of your willingness and ability to repay your debts. That's what it's supposed to be. We can argue the fairness of that at another date, but character is something that funders will look at. And finally, general conditions. What's the state of your industry? Are you trying to do something in a dying industry? What's the economy in general? Banks might pull out of an entire sector for a period of time because they're just not comfortable with it. They did that with banking. They did that with restaurants during COVID because no restaurants could actually show how they were going to survive. So a bank simply couldn't enter into that space. So financial condition is important. The next one here isn't hugely important until you're really pinching pennies, but do know that there's always a cost to get funding, and your goal should be to get the lowest cost funding.
Please listen to this urgent message in full.
With the best terms, right? Lowest cost funding at the best terms. Some higher cost funding sources to be aware of include your credit cards, high interest credit cards, factoring, which I talked about earlier, some online or alternative financing, especially if you don't quite understand it, they can hide fees in there. And then any line of credit, I talked about permanent before, any line of credit that's not paid back in a timely manner becomes a high cost fund, because all you're doing is paying interest on money that that you've used in the past. So just some considerations. Next one here is purpose of funds. Most funding sources, I would say all funding sources, have a specific purpose and they're shaped to accomplish that purpose. So if you are looking funds to overcome, say, an identified gap, I know I said all of them are for that purpose, but sometimes you know that you have you've offered up your service and you have invoiced somebody, and it's going to take them, they told you they're not going to pay for 60 days. You can actually get a loan on that invoice. You know, you can go out and get a loan that'll pay you 80-85% of that invoice, so that you have that money to utilize now. You don't have to wait for 60 days. And then when you get paid, you pay back that loan. So it allows you to get access to that money earlier. Asset acquisition is pretty basic, pretty self-explanatory. Startup funding, this goes to the question I think Kat asked earlier. The best sources of funds for startup are self, friends, family, and fools, bootstrapping, if you can make it work, and crowdfunding really works. Crowdfunding, either donation or rewards-based crowdfunding, are excellent early on. And then sometimes if you're the right type of business with a high growth trajectory, angel investors might also be interested. And then if you are truly high growth, you know, you're going to be exploding. A bank can't touch you because that growth comes with risk. That is the world of angel investors and venture capital. And I know Sandy here on the call, he has experience with this in the past. But if you are a business and you want to be a unicorn, you want to take over the world with your brand new idea, the only way you're going to get through that, you could get started by bootstrapping, but if you're truly growing to, you know, 50 million, $100 million or more as a business, you're likely going to need angel or venture investment. Okay. And then two more categories, just go over really quickly, just a factor to consider. If you are unwilling to give up a piece of your business, you're unwilling to bring on other owners, that's going to limit you to debt or other forms of funding. Equity is not going to be an option. It's easy. If you make that decision, you just don't think about that. If you're willing to offer up a piece of your business for funding or expertise, then that opens up to you. The other is growth rate. If you are, I already mentioned this in the last slide, but if you're growing really, really fast, it's most likely that the best source of funding is going to be in the smaller arena, being self-funded. But as you do grow, that angel and venture funds are the way to look. Way to go. All right. With that, I am actually at the funding matrix, and this is what we're going to go into the breakouts and discuss, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit, give you a chance to think about it. We'll go into the breakouts. You can, you can talk bad about me in the breakouts, and then you can ask your questions when we come to me when we come back out. But this matrix is designed to provide you with all of the stuff that I went through in these last 18 slides, but all on a single page. So the idea is to think about what stage you're in as a business. And if you're in a very startup stage, you're in column 1 there, you know, your options are limited. So based on those options, and your expected growth rate is maybe moderate, so you're in column 3. What does it look like? Do you have a plus? You've got a plus for self-funding, and then I've got a check for self-funding for moderate growth, as fit, but not maybe perfect. Financial condition doesn't matter for you if you're self-funding. So just kind of looking at these columns based on where you are and finding out, kind of figuring out what your options are here. I created this. It makes sense for me. I think differently than other people. And I realize if it doesn't fit you, that's fine. And if you've got recommendations to make it better, I would love to hear those. I will point out that down at the bottom, grants, I've just graded out because it's simply too variable. If you find a grant, it's great. It's like magic. It's, it's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but it's simply too variable for us to assess here. So I'll leave that to you to decide whether or not you want to pursue those. So before we jump into the breakouts, any questions? Any quick questions? We can go into longer form questions after the breakouts. Any quick questions on what I just presented? Sandy.
Yeah, there is a phase between concept and launch, which is just to prove the MVP, especially something that requires hardware and software development. It might take 6 months to a year to just get to the first one. And sometimes just personal funds are not good enough, especially if it is something that relates to medical devices.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could address who I can go to, or how one go about getting that. I hate to call it mezzanine funding, but because it has a different meaning. But the in-between funding that gets you from paper or computer diagrams to stuff showing that, hey, this is working, so you can show it to investors.
So the reason I use the stages that I did is this is language that you'd find at the SBA, which is primarily focused on more traditional businesses, Main Street type businesses, rather than the world that you're in, which is definitely high growth traded sector, high tech. I will say that anything before you've really begun traction is the world, as I understand it, is the world of angel and seed investors. I don't know of any other sources besides angels and seeds that are appropriate for that, that middle stage there. Once you've got some traction, and I would say you're really in the growth stage when you've got, when you're showing traction, that's when, venture is more likely to come in. So, I would say it's angel, but honestly, Sandy, I think you probably know that world better than I do.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, there was the question, Robert, about the spreadsheet version of your matrix, which is completely over my head. Is there one that we can kind of like, check mark it and book and put some numbers in it, and it magically tells us what, what process we need?
So I can create that. I haven't done that, but I can create one that would kind of give you a score based on your answers. It's going to take me a few days to do that, but I can do that, Dante.
Thank you very much for me and Adrian, who asked the question originally. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I realize not everybody likes these, big charts with lots of things on them. But this is a big topic, and I couldn't figure out a way to visualize it in this, in a single page. Okay, well, with that, let's go ahead and jump into the breakouts. All right, so welcome back, everyone. Oh, I'm going to stop. Actually, don't stop sharing. I'll just go through here. Tomorrow, I've got a mentor hour at 4 o'clock. I'm just going to go through these slides real quick, and then we'll jump into questions. I already mentioned next week, we're going to be hearing from Peter Thorson with Palo Alto Software. Phenomenal guy, teaches at the U of O, teaches entrepreneurship at the U of O, very knowledgeable. We can talk next week about what you need to do to get your certificate. And remember to join the Facebook group. There's conversations happening there that are valuable. And with that, let's go ahead and answer some questions. And I apologize, I went a little bit long with my presentation, but like I can stay around for those who can. If anybody cannot stay around and has a burning question, I want you to raise your hand first.